Okay, I apologize. I called the meeting to order and it is 4:37. Uh, First up, I need a motion to approve the agenda for the board workshop meeting. Brian, Nicole, all in favor? Aye. We're all here, 7-0. Kept forgetting. So up first, for our workshop, we are gonna hear about the state of curriculum on social studies and ELA. And yeah, I was gonna say there might be, you got it?
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up the
Thank you.
presentation.
Nope.
Nope, not that. Not going to do that.
Why would you
Nope.
even
I'm so sorry, everyone.
suggest that?
So thanks for being
My
here.
fault.
Thank you. While she
Okay.
does that, I will kind of do a quick introduction of my team here. So, um, through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCE Staff Development and the Center for Professional Development and Education Reform at University of Rochester, they partner together to do a social studies leadership cadre. So this regional social studies cadre is a working group of educators that are committed to supporting high quality social studies teaching by staying abreast of current research and resources and drawing upon shared knowledge and experience for the purpose of improving social studies learning for all. So the cadre releases social studies and other content teachers 4 days throughout the school year to collaborate and learn about certain topics. So the theme of last year's cadre was recognizing and addressing the misinformation and disinformation in the social studies classroom. So both Kevin Sachs, our Fairport High School social studies lead teacher, and Lauren Romagnola, our English lead teacher at the high school, were a part of last year's cadre. And they would both come back from their cadre experiences and talk to myself and our lead teacher teams about all the awesome work that they were doing. So we decided that this would be a great opportunity to bring to all of our 612 social studies and English teachers. So on conference day this year, they presented this to all 612 social studies and English teachers, and they're going to give you a condensed version of this today. Just so you are aware, Lauren, Kevin, and the cadre are continuing their work this year, but this year's focus is on depolarizing our classrooms, strategies for civil engagement. So now I'm going to hand you over to Lauren and Kevin.
Just before you get started, thanks so much, Jackie and
Yeah.
Kevin and Lauren, for being here. We wanted to give you also a glimpse into what happens on Superintendent's Conference Day. So some of the learning that's happening. So I'm going to give you this clicker, and then I'm going to get out of this seat because it is not mine.
Thank you.
So good segue, because all right, so we've all taken professional development at various times over the years, and sometimes it's more philosophical than practical. And I think when I saw this title, and this Jackie shared this with me, I think 2 years ago or whatever, when it first came up, I was really excited because I was like, this sounds like really practical and stuff, things we could use. Also a little bit scary, and in the last 10 to 15 years teaching like politics and government, it's a little different and than it's been before. And I hated the fact that there were moments where I couldn't, I was tempted to avoid a topic because it could get hairy or uncomfortable. And so increasingly I found moments like that, and I've been teaching long enough where I just push through and do it anyway. But I was like, if I was a first year teacher, what could I do? And you're faced with some dilemmas. So this cadre that we did last year, dealt with the idea of mis and disinformation, and it gave us very practical ways of kind of dealing with these things. Because look, when kids come into politics, they're excited to talk about the controversial stuff. They want to. And I feel like as a teacher, if you don't do that, you're failing them. And so have honest, real conversations with students, and this gives a practical framework to do that, whatever the topic is. This doesn't lean one way or another. This is just whatever you got, put it through this protocol, and it can be helpful. So this is what we taught on the Superintendent's Day, and we're going to try and do this in 30 minutes with you guys.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And then so as an English teacher, he was telling me about the cadre, and I was like, that really does sound like something that can bridge into English. When we read literature, we talk about things that are controversial, and similarly, kids will say things, and you just want to have a way to, get through it with respecting each other's views and kind of managing that. So I felt like this would be useful for me, and I was right. It was awesome. I was the only English teacher that participated, but this year when they returned, there's 6 of us now, so I feel good about that. So, all right.
Yeah, so it's called SIFT, all right, and we'll talk to you a little bit about what each of those stand for, and we have posters too. If anyone wants one,
We do have
when we're done, we can share that with you. So basically, this idea of information overload. There's so much out there, more than ever, and kids are coming in with all kinds of things. Like I can remember, I've been teaching 23 years. In my first year, occasionally get a student with bringing in some idea or something they saw on TV or whatever, or in a magazine or in a newspaper when they used to read those. Sorry, I know, right? But like that idea of they come in with something, usually you're able to deal with that pretty easily. Increasingly, there was more and more of them bringing in ideas like, well, where'd you get that? Where do we go with this? And this gives you a mechanism to kind of handle that. All right, so you want to click. One of the key things of the entire training that we did was misinformation versus disinformation. And we wanted to have a clear understanding of what those two things are. So you can see the definition on there. Misinformation is incorrect or misleading information, whereas misinformation can exist with or without specific malicious intent. Disinformation is deliberately deceptive and intentionally propagated. So I'm sure when I was reading that, a bunch of things jumped into all of our brains about the way we've seen both of those things. So it's important to kind of be starting at a baseline and having students know exactly, what we're talking about. Okay. So, and this is up.
It is up.
Okay.
It's, yes. It's on Brett's computer. There's a tab. So, but we should give a little context before we watch the video. So, one of the activities that they took us through in this workshop was kind of practicing this idea where we watch a video clip. It's from the Associated Press, but we don't have any context. And practice just making observations about this content. What are we noticing? We worked through it very deliberately. We watched it 3 times. We met with people in the group and talked about what we observed. And then we shared out those observations. So for the sake of time tonight, we're going to show it to you one time. But we do have the note sheet just so you can see kind of what we had used to go through it. And so again, we had no context, and this is kind of just simulating how we receive information. And so we don't always know the full story, and we're drawing conclusions on that information. All right, so. Yeah.
To escape, it's go down to your Google, the browser, to the
Chrome down the bottom.
down at the bottom, right there. Click into it first. There you
Yes,
go.
thank you.
E ono ngā pōti if
6 votes opposed.
The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells. The gallery is to be cleared.
Now that I use Monday service,
in the
AI.
full training, when we did it, is you watch the first time, simply observe and reflect on what you saw. And what elements draw your attention and why. The second, the elements that drew your attention, avoiding inferential language. And then the third viewing, once more, check and strengthen and clarify and augment your descriptions. And as it went through and you watch it again, you pick up different things each time as you go through. And the reason we show that, it's kind of shocking. Like when you see it, in your reaction initially, you might have a very visceral reaction one way. And then as you watch it, you might pick up some other cues throughout the second watching and whatnot. And then as we talk about it, additional context will be provided that might totally change perspectives on it.
Yeah, so as we listened to, we did this in the cadre, and then we replicated this with the teachers on the conference day, and just listening to people's conversation. Of course, as educators, they're talking about, just the different assumptions about culture and, expectations and decorum, and, just coming to the table with different levels of experience with this information. Probably drawing some conclusions that maybe our students wouldn't necessarily. And so we kind of wanted to bridge that gap, and that's where the SIFT would help us. So the next level here was just to look at some different headlines, which we will share with you. And the headlines were three different versions that every group got, and they worked together to read them, decide which of these narratives seems to fit what they had concluded by watching the videos. And so they, again, worked with their colleagues, talked about the different headlines, and we overheard a lot of conversation about the different words that were being used, the way that the different terms were either giving the people power or taking the power away, and kind of the dynamic there. And again, these are things we wouldn't necessarily have seen with our students, but that's kind of the goal, right? To notice these nuances in the three narratives. So this was a long conversation. We gave them some time.
Lauren,
And
I'm guessing everybody is reading these. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
I just don't know if people are listening because I know I'm reading them.
Yep, go ahead. Take
Sure,
a
we'll
second.
give you
Yeah,
a sec.
give it.
Yep,
Yeah, go
for
ahead
sure.
and read through those.
I just figured if I was doing it and I looked around and everybody else was looking too, so I think we're good. Thank you.
Yeah, so the conversation was about the language that was used, what would be promoted, and we were asking them to think about what would be the most likely narrative to spread. Not whether or not, we didn't know at this point whether or not what we were looking at was the real narrative, but just kind of what gives a narrative the power to be spreadable, and what kind of informs that for us. So it was a really good conversation, and I think it was really grounding why we were looking at SIFT and why this was important.
And bottom line, when you look at it, is are you seeing some hooligans like disrupting the order of a meeting or a government process, or are you or another take on that? The other side, the far other side was these are indigenous people that are through their native, natural processes and traditions protesting through, how they're being treated by their government. And that was actually closer to the truth. So it was interesting. And different things were revealed, as I said, like with the 3 times of watching it. But for our purposes, obviously, we're only doing it the one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the real story behind this video is that it was happening in Parliament.
It was happening in Parliament.
And it was the Hakka people responding to something that was happening, and it was like they had planned that this was going to
correct,
be
and it
part
was
of this,
a formal
event.
planned protest of government proceedings to
But-
draw more attention to indigenous causes that were being compromised.
Cool. All right, so that was our segue into kind of what we were gathering for. We talked about this acronym called SIFT, which stands for Stop, Investigate, Find the Source, and Trace It Back. And then we talked about why we would want to implement it. And the next slide has the video, I believe. We talked about the fact that a lot of misinformation, especially with AI and social media, there's a lot more mis and disinformation. And it's just so important to educate our kids to be literate in this.
For sure. So do we want to walk through the videos next?
Yeah, the video is next. So this is, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so Kevin Mewison, who's at U of R, and he had one daughter graduated 2 years ago, and another one is a senior now. They're awesome, and he's the one that was kind of leading the cadre. And we use this book, which is great if anyone wants to check it out. I highly recommend it. And he did put together a video that's 6 minutes long that really does a nice job describing SIFT. So in the context of our training, this was one of the things we used to kind of frame it. Then we went into more detail on each of the elements of SIFT. But for our purposes, we'll show you this, and I think that does a nice job of.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
In a world that's chock full of misinformation and disinformation, do you ever wonder how to tell if a source is credible? People start looking for sources of information almost as soon as they start interacting with others. Young people learn in real-life contexts. They give different weights to different sources of evidence. If a parent is telling them, you need to put a coat on because it's cold outside, that's going to be different than that information coming from somebody else who they might not necessarily see as reputable. Something else that's important to consider is the relationship between confidence and accuracy. As young people are exposed to people who are consistently accurate, they come to trust those people over time. People who are confident but inaccurate, young people come to sort of mistrust those folks. Similarly, people who speak conditionally about what they know, like perhaps it's this or perhaps it's that, those people tend to be, increasingly viewed by youth as trustworthy if that information that they're presenting over time is accurate. We perceive information emotionally as opposed to sort of rationally. So before we encourage people to dig into single sources of information, what we'd really like them to do is to engage in a process called SIFT, rather than to sort of dig deeply into a piece of information that may not necessarily be credible and accurate at all. What we should do first is to stop, think about our emotional response to what we're looking at, and identify exactly what it is we're looking at. From there, we say, okay, what is the nature of this source of information? Investigate it. Where did it come from? Where was it published? How was it spread? And then, really importantly, the F in the process is to find other sources. So set that information aside and then look for other sources of information that corroborate with that. So once you've sort of found other sources, the objective there is to then say, relative to the claim that's presented in these sources, how can I trace this back, if possible, to the original context in which this source was created and in which this information was spread? I think we have to address mis and disinformation as if it's kind of a public health crisis. An important role of the teacher is to establish a kind of climate of respect and trust among each other, so that kids can compare what it's like in this classroom with people of different perspectives in comparison to what it's like in society, where mis and disinformation proliferate and are used in ways that are not necessarily in keeping with the way that we ought to behave together. So classrooms can be really good spaces for establishing with kids, this is how it ought to be. This is how we ought to work together around information. For example, can we agree in our classroom that we're going to seek out accurate information about science and politics and history and culture because accuracy is important to me and the people that I care about? Can we agree that fact-checking is an important process and that it's not the same as censorship, and we can explain to students what that means and why that's the case? So in other words, establishing a set of sort of fundamental principles that we're going to use as a way of thinking together about information throughout the school year, and then returning to those principles over time as new cases show up. Another thing that teachers can do is to engage in pre-bunking or inoculation. So there are common practices that exist within misinformation and disinformation. Things such as scapegoating, appealing to false expertise or what have you. You're going to come upon these methods of manipulation, and you can be ready for them. So I'm going to pull up the tweet related to Hurricane Helene. What you see is a picture of a child on a boat with a puppy after all of the damage had been done. The person who posted the tweet indicated that this is a sad scene and their heart breaks, and just below what you see is an audience correction where they say this is an AI-generated image, it's not real. It's very easy to generate mis and disinformation using AI, so these kinds of images are likely flooding social media all the time. After that correction was made, the person who posted that image responded and said, I don't care if this is a real photograph or not, I'm gonna leave this image up because it represents what people are feeling and experiencing. That's an especially dangerous thing too, because essentially what people are saying is, even if something is inaccurate, as long as it represents some kind of experience that I have, it's accurate to me. One of the sort of phenomena that happens when those kinds of images proliferate in online spaces is what's called an illusory truth effect, which is that eventually it becomes true as people see it enough, or it represents something that becomes true. What's interesting about that particular image is it reinforces the idea that amidst Hurricane Helene, bad things were happening and public services were not responding, even though local, state, county, and federal resources were activated relatively quickly to help people in that circumstance. I think Jonathan Swift's phrase was, falsehood flies while the truth limps behind it. It takes much more time to cautiously and thoughtfully debunk sources of information than it does for sources of information that are bad to sort of travel around the world. And I think one of the things that we have to ask ourselves as educators is, what are the kinds of classroom spaces that we want to create? Not just learning about the content, but also learning about the process by which we verify the accuracy or credibility of the content. Those two things have to co-occur in classrooms where accuracy and credibility are things that we care about and we want to attend to with kids.
So one of the, there's so many things in that short video that make me think of different points, but like one of the key ones I think is watching that AI generated, post on the end, and they're like, oh, it's fake, and I don't care because I feel that way. Like, and that's, Jen and I were talking before about her daughter's topic, AI in leadership, and we went to DC and, meeting with all that, and there's people that have been in DC for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades that are trying to figure out what the heck AI is and how we're going to legislate this and what role does the government play and all that. Some kids came up to me today and they're like, did you see this new Google thing? It's apparently some new thing where it's an additional adaptation of Google AI to make videos that look even more real. Like, and the kid was showing me this stuff today and I had no idea. It's crazy. So bottom line, things are changing. What's not changing is we need to try and seek truth, whatever that is, whatever the technology is. And SIFT gives you a framework to do that. Now, realistically, okay, there's an S, an I, an F, and a T. It'd be great if all our students were disciplined enough to get to the T. Rarely gonna happen. But the good news about that is when you're going through the process, when you go through like the first or second step and they get used to it because they've seen this and we've pointed to it like all year and get them used to that protocol and that mechanism, that they do it without even thinking about it. They don't do that right now, most of them. All right, my leadership guys, after going there, we practice a lot of this stuff. They didn't call it this, they didn't know this yet, but like they did it because they had to figure out to navigate all this. All right, so like that's the goal. I think whether it's English or whether it's social studies, to give students a basic framework to kind of navigate the increasingly chaotic and sometimes misleading, media kind of landscape out there, right? And so that's our goal. And again, what we liked about all of the training that we did for 4 sessions, full day, the whole year, was that it gave us practical, pretty simple things that we really could use. And we both already have.
Yes. In a non-serious way. I used it this summer. I was at Seabreeze with my family. I was in line at the bobsleds, and my son ran over to me and he said, Taylor Swift got engaged. And I said, well, wait a minute. Is this true? We need to figure out where you heard this from because that could not be real. And, of course, I Googled it right away. I could figure out, yes, this is widely reported. It's real. But just the idea that we paused. We're like, is that real? Is that true? Before I perpetuate this lie, let's make sure that it is accurate. And as it turns out, he was right. But so yeah, our goal is to get our kids to kind of just do that more. Pause, think about things. So yeah, so we talked a lot more about SIFT, and we gave some examples at the end of our presentation where the teachers went through the process of kind of doing this exact thing with some articles that we had created. Well, not, we didn't create them.
Yeah, so that's what, and we had time to do that in the hour framework we had.
did.
So just kind of explain
Sorry,
what we did with them, with them. We're not going to do that right now with you guys, but.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then at the end, everyone got their poster to take back to their classroom. And yeah, people seemed excited, so. This was one example that I think, yeah, there we go, there were two things.
Yeah. Yeah, this was one, if you guys saw this summer, the direwolf story. They said the return of the direwolf, and if you're a Game of Thrones fan, that was like one of the animals in there, and I was super excited. And then I read that, it took me like 30 seconds, look a little more, and I'm like, this is not what they're saying. But what a great headline, and you throw that, you add social media to the mix, and all of a sudden you got this perfect toxic stew to disseminate craziness, and it got traction. Like major networks we're talking about ABC News and NBC, they all like had stories on it when it came out. They're like, Return of the Direwolf. Well, not exactly, but what a headline. So, all right.
I said to Mary Canlin, I should give this to my mother to practice because we have this conversation.
I'm gonna bring this out for Thanksgiving.
Oh my
Take your poster, take your poster with
Kevin,
you.
So they make the placemat
sorry,
version.
I don't want to derail you guys too much, but I do have a question because this is something you just said, and I picked up on it because of my background. But the headline aspect, and it is it's a fantastic headline. So how much does, and you guys might be getting into this, but how much do you use this to? Hey, that's what the headline says, but the story is different than the headline, and the story serves a different purpose than the headline. And I know I'm going down my journalism rabbit hole here, but that is an important part of navigating this. So how does SIFT play in? How do you guys use that to kind of balance all of that?
Yeah, so we're just starting. We're kind of figuring it out and navigating that. I think in the context of most of my students, they're not going. In the past maybe hadn't gone too far beyond the headline, and that's all they want because that's the TikTok and the social media kind of way of looking at it. I got a newspaper background and so I want to read the whole thing and then go back. So encouraging them to be more deliberate about that. Gary Beyer, who you've come into our class in journalism, they have more time. They go into more depth on that, and I do in leadership and in media, in politics in the spring. I do a special media literacy unit where we talk about that and talk about the dynamics of who writes a headline, how'd this get there, and what is different about, what is accurate about that, what is misleading, what is false, But yeah, that's a whole.
And then in 11th grade English, we do a rhetoric unit around advertisement, and kind of similarly, we look at ethos, pathos, and logos, and how that propels a message, and definitely getting them to read in and look at the speaker, the purpose, who's their audience, who are they trying to appeal to.
Brian, also though, I'm the advisor, shameless plug, for the Lampion, and I got a ton of my students from both leadership and A Push, which are the two classes I'm teaching right now, that are in it, and they're learning this whole thing from the other side, and it's really cool. So it all kind of comes together, and they're kind of getting tools, whatever their path may lead, that they can use and be better citizens, and if they go into those fields, even better, prepared for what they're going to encounter. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, we're grateful for the time and energy and resources you put into it. I can't wait for Sammy to take this class or to be immersed in it.
I think you started it out really strong, talking about being a newer teacher, and in the political climate right now, having that structure is such a gift. So it's awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just because I'm still getting to know everybody and I missed it before. What's your last name?
I'm Lauren Romanola.
Say that again.
Romanola.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I have a Martha Brown Middle Schooler that did the play with. Oh. Yeah.
think we're up to the CIP.
Yep.
2 pieces of this. We have our friends from campus come up, and I think LaBella's on be close by just in case. I think we're going to start talking about the 2020-23 CIP.
All right. 2023 capital project update for October. Just a reminder, this is the budget slide of the overall referendum, $45,827,000 and how it's broken down by the incidental budget, the construction contracts, as well as the spend down, furnishings, equipment, and construction contingency. Construction contingency to date, overall project contractor applications were billed 18%. Our construction contingency burn rate is at 25% allocated. So just an overall summary of that. Total construction contingency was roughly $2.4 million. After pending issues and approved change orders, we're still sitting on $1.8 million in construction contingency. So pretty healthy in that regard. And just a reminder, construction contract allowances are at $540,000 approximately, and those are built into the contract values already. All right, the next few slides are overall summaries of when we're doing the work. So right now, primarily, we're in the green section for the library area and the summer edition for the STEAM. So that started summer of 24 and is slated for turnover fall of 2026 for the new students coming over. As a reminder, Martha Brown, still part of the project. Sometimes we forget with the high school work that we have, but it starts summer of 26 through the summer of 2027. Overall, we have some slides coming up with pictures and time lapse. In the library area, for the most part, we are doing framing and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough. In the STEAM edition, very interesting and dramatic to watch. Last time we were here, we just finished footings and foundations, and right now we're about 90% finished with the steel erection at this point. At the tennis courts, you're going to see that they're paved. That's the first binder course, and you're going to see the vinyl black posts that we had at the last change order that we came in. So even within a few weeks after that change order was executed, we are out putting the black vinyl posts in. Over at the track and field, we're doing a lot of the utility work in and around the track and just getting prepared for the bleacher foundations that we're going to be starting in November. And coming up next, we have Mr. Esposito.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Got asked to talk a little bit about our contractor screening process. Here we recently with just some safety concerns on site and something we've been doing ever since we started working at Fairport Central School District on the roof project in 2015. Every contractor that we have that comes on site to work on your facility, no different than entering into any of your buildings, they are required to sign in with our main office at our office trailer, and we screen them per the contractual obligations that they signed on to for the bid document. So prior to us even going out to bid and getting contractors, we worked with the district's facilities team and security team to understand what we need to do to make sure we can have contractors come on site. So they're each bound to do that contractually. When they come on site, they come to our trailer. They're required to give us their driver's license, their OSHA 10 card, which is a mandate for New York State working in school facilities on construction projects. And we have them fill out a form and sign it. That includes their vehicle make and model in case they park in the wrong spot. Sometimes that happens in construction where we need to get that vehicle moved out of the way for deliveries. So there's a lot of information for each contractor and each person on site that we utilize. And then we run them through the Raptor system, the same thing as you have at every one of your entrances to your buildings, which does a background check through the registered sex offender and anybody that you have highlighted on your campus that is not supposed to be here in any capacity. If we do have any red flags that pop up, we escort that person off the site immediately, and they're not to be working on our job site. We keep a binder of this, of all of our personnel that comes to our project within our trailer and facility so we can look them up. And currently, as of right now, we have 82 contractors that have been registered to work on this project. They're required to keep their identification card out at all times, no different than any students or staff on this process, so we are very identifiable in the buildings when we are in the buildings and have to get around spaces, but really in our zoned off construction spaces where we have to be. So I know there were just some questions with that have come up in the past few weeks, and we just wanted to address this. It's something that we take very serious. We have to in the school buildings. We know it is because we might be some of the weakest locations within a building when we have doors that are getting renovated. We have windows that are emptied out. We just have plywood on them, similar to what we have at the front of the high school right now. So we need to make sure that we maintain that safety and security aspect for the project from start to finish. So that was just something I know it came up. Brett asked me to address that as part of this presentation. Any questions regarding that?
Questions? A quick question. So they get run through the Raptor system and checked against the databases. How often does that happen?
So it happens the first time they come on the job site, and if there's any additional information that comes up with those people throughout that process. So that typically it's just that first time they're on the site.
Right, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to let Brian do all the fun stuff, though.
I get to the pretty pictures. All right, so we're going to start out at the track. One of the things that we updated is sometimes we provide these photos and it's hard for us to tell in space where we are. So in the top left corner, Craig went through and took a vantage point from where this is taken. So this is from the shot put looking towards the track, towards the parking lot. And this is the sub base for the asphalt. And this is a shot from the opposite corner with your back to the parking lot. And we have the time lapse. How do I hit play from here? Oh, did it. So as we're going through, you're going to see them pile quite a bit of dirt in the center of the track. There was different piles. So some of the piles were used for structural backfill, and we get tests on them, so we make sure we get the compaction. Some of it's topsoil, and some of the other piles were used and staged to be taken off the site.
So you find the most suitable?
The most suitable, yes. The unsuitable has already left.
It's out.
It's gone.
Glad you could talk through that.
And we still have some of our unsuitables allowance that we put into the base contract is still pretty healthy with what we got left. Tennis courts. So up at the tennis courts, what you're looking at here is them paving a path around. The tennis courts proper have the binder. That's the thicker base coat, and the top goes on through this fall in preparation for us to put the striping on and the nets and everything else come spring. Here we go. Here's another good shot. Looking across the tennis courts, the trench drains are in. The black vinyl posts are going up. What's that? Grass seating?
No, seating, like
Oh,
chairs.
seating.
Sorry.
Yes, there is. There's bleachers. So we have little concrete pads. The bleachers aren't here, and I do believe they're movable.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, I mean, there's stand up at the top. Yeah, that is a good view.
I wouldn't call them movable.
So if,
Rectangles are right. They're spread up around, so you get vantage point at every court.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Are we using?
oh, hold on. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know. Do we have to?
New bleachers, or did we have some to use?
Not enough.
Not enough. Okay. Well, that's
Gotcha.
exciting that there's more. Okay. Thanks.
Here's the drainage coming in. And then the sub-base installation.
Does it help with how dry it's been this fall?
Yes, it's helped the project immensely. Anytime there's a lot of rain, the trucks just go through, it gets rutted up. So with the drought, although not good for growing, it's good for construction. All right, here's the binder going in. All right. So here we are in the library portion. So as you can see in the top left corner, this is looking down the corridor. So in this picture, to your left is going to be the new library. To the right is going to be the new 3 classrooms. Just another shot in that first social studies room. The rough framing's up, and again, we're running the mechanical, the electrical, and the plumbing, and the ceiling and the walls. And upstairs on the second floor, where we took 2 alcoves and are creating resource rooms up there, the space is demoed. We've already taken over the little vestibule area that was there, or alcove area. And here's outside that corridor, just looking down. We've opened up the ceiling so we can get any MEP. And prior to this, if you recall, that was a metal pan ceiling, so that'll come back. There's not too much of that metal pan ceiling left quite yet, but there still is some. Social Studies 131, these are the 2 across from the library. These are being framed up. There's also a resource space that the room's being broken up to, and you can see that on the far side. The fun stuff. Here's the STEM edition. As of a month ago, we were just finishing up footings and foundations. That's a shot with the foundations, the piers sticking up with the anchor bolts. And here it is with the steel going up. So quite a transformation. We're slated to start putting roof decking in the beginning of November and getting ourselves dried in so we can actually work in the space and do the underground plumbing, which is coming up next. Here's another vantage point with your back to the hill, looking towards the STEM edition. And here's the time lapse. I only wish it could happen this fast. All right. Any questions on the 23 project?
So I would say the board is being really patient. We were getting our calendars organized, and we realized no one has the same time. So December 17th, we're supposed to be doing a group tour with the board, but I'm going to work something out with Bob Clark, and I have monthly meetings with them, and I'll let you know when that is, and if somebody wants to get a sneak peek because we're just so excited about it, I'll just try to provide some opportunities because things are happening, and it's really cool to see it come to fruition. And, so just that'll be like a quick text message, hey, I'm going to be there, and if it works, if it doesn't, we'll try to get a couple of those in. It's impromptu if that's okay.
All right, thank you.
Are we on our website? Are some of these things going to be put there?
The time lapses
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, we continually try to update those so people could see the progress.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
I did love at homecoming, quite a few people out on the hill with the kids playing going, what? Does anybody know what's like happening over there? And I'm going, what do you mean what's happening over there?
Not to be confused with the 2023.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that because all of these different projects that are coming to fruition, and 23 is definitely different than 25. Was focused on, this past month when we were able to confirm the vote. We're going to hear talking about the budget, so you have an idea of what the overall dollars look like, and draft summary of the schedule, so you know what's coming on the horizon, and the user group meetings and the phasing components. And I'm going to, Mr. Nardone, you're going to be part of this conversation as well, so feel free to jump in. So this is exciting. It's the project that's going to be coming up, not to be confused with 2020.
All right. So we now have a referendum that's been approved. Congratulations. So what you're looking at is the conceptual estimate that we had for the project. So we hit the ground running. What we're going to go through is what are the next steps. So in the conceptual budget, we are running from where we were at referendum through schematic design, design development, and construction documents. There are a series of different design benchmarks that Troy's going to run through. But as we do those, we re-estimate as we go along to make sure that the budget is still healthy from where we were at conceptual. So this is a detailed, bless you. This is a detailed overall phase schedule. Again, it shows the schematic design, development. Some of the key things to pay attention to, or the key dates, is for phase 1. We are going to submit to SED on July 1st. That starts the review clock, with construction starting in March, shortly after the bid phase comes back and the documents are approved. It's roughly about 5 months. And again, for phase 2. So to see that in a nice graph as it goes through, this is a little bit easier to see. Thank you, Lindsay. Up at the top, phase 1, you have the first 3 schools: Martha Brown, Joanna Perrin, and Brooks Hill. And just anecdotally, the reason they are sequenced this way is to get to maximize the aid, which Jefferson Avenue and Northside Dudley couldn't be submitted until later in order to maximize the aid. And because Dudley's adjacent to Northside, it made most sense to include them for construction. So as you go through, you see where the yellow, where we bid the project, and phase 2, as we submit phase 1 for SED review, we're automatically starting on phase 2 in conjunction with. So in 2028, we are going to be constructing both phase 1 and phase 2. So, and we are saying that in phase 1, construction will continue on those 3 schools. There's pretty heavy HVAC package that goes in. That construction will continue all the way to 2029. Any questions on the design schedule before Troy kind of gets into the detail? All right.
Can't believe 2026 is around the corner.
Hey, thanks. So during the pre-referendum phase, we did a lot of truth-seeking, information gathering. We prefer to call it like the conceptual phase of things. We're gathering all the information. These guys do a good job of putting an estimate, and as a team, we go out, get the vote passed. And so now the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and the design team has already kicked off gathering more detail on the spaces themselves. We will be kicking off user group meetings where we start to go back to the user groups and say, these are the things that we heard months ago. Tell us what's changed, tell us what still remains true, and then we start diving into the detail of things, working out with the construction administration team as to what's feasible, what the constructability of each thing is, how things will actually go together in the field, how we're gonna make it work. So the first phase kicks off of design, is schematic design. Here is where we start to look at each little block and start to put a narrative to it. Like, these are the things that are gonna happen in these spaces. To the end user, do you agree? Is this how you interpret your use of this space? We start to set up programmatic diagrams, narratives, sketches, so on, start working through the design. It's all the fun stuff. It's all the stuff on trace paper. Bob's been through it a couple times. There's a roll of trace still in his office that we can go pull out at any time and start working through things. So these are the things that we're going to be doing in each building, and it's great. You get a lot of conversation going back and forth. You start learning how people actually use the spaces, and it shifts your view because it's different for each building and each administration itself. So at the end of each phase, as Brian mentioned before, we will be putting together an order of magnitude of costs, and this is where we have a gut check to say, are we still in line with where we conceptually were? Did Troy sneak in anything into the project that wasn't supposed to be there? And I just want you to focus on the top right-hand side there for phase 1 and phase 2 of design, like Brian mentioned before. During schematic design, we'll still be having user group meetings. So as we go on, the next phase, design development. Here's where we further develop the design. We start picking materials. Things start to get more tangible and real. Things start to get more dimensioned. We start figuring out what the assemblies are, what the MEP scope is. We start laying them out in the spaces. And here, there's more coordination between the design team and the different disciplines. And again, we evaluate the budget. We evaluate, what the detail layouts are. We go back to the user groups. We say, are we still on track with what you expect? Moving on to construction documents. Here it gets more detailed, intensive. The design team is more focused now. It's more internal project team coordination. Not to say that things can't be brought to us. We've thought of something else. Can we add this in? But generally, it's pencils down. We're doing all the work that we can to hit Brian's July. I heard July 1st. Schedule of going to SED. And here we put together another detailed estimate, and then we wait for SED to do their thing over the next 4 to 6 months. Hopefully we're on the shorter end there. Any question on the design phases?
I know in the past, sometimes students have been able to kind of observe some of the stuff that you've done. I don't know, are there opportunities on this project too, or shadow? I mean,
Again, if you go back to the earlier phases, right? Schematic design. If they're getting insights on student use and how they use the classroom, or their thoughts about the library or the cafeteria usage, it's not as intricate as it was with a tech lab at the high school. Right? I don't want to give any.
I just wondered because sometimes just job shadowing and seeing, because it is very interesting.
We always lots of summers, lots of internships.
Okay, yep, that's great.
I know we work heavily with the design tech team here. We always have kids from the high school.
That's
come
great.
and job
Yeah,
shadow.
I wondered.
So
That's all.
That is, on a side, it's great when there is an actual Fairport project on the boards for them to come and take a look at.
Yeah.
So that's always, there's always an opportunity for that from our end.
Not trying to create more work. I just wondered if
Yeah.
there.
And as for students being a part of user groups, that would totally be dependent on each school admin to kind of say, what makes the most sense in terms of the scope that we're looking at the time.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I'll just step in one quick
Sure.
second. So the main word that we're going to look for over the next 6 to 9 months is communication, right? So this is where we really communicate with our internal stakeholders and our project team to make sure everything is buttoned up as much as it can be. Once we submit to SED, that process could be elongated. If they have questions on the drawings, that's when SED and the architects will go back and forth, understanding the drawings and making sure everything's copacetic and understandable so they can determine if it's aid-driven or not. So we really want to be as detailed as possible once we get to that CD phase and submitting to SED. And that's why Troy said pencils down. Once we get to the CD phase, we want to be as accurate as possible to avoid those holdups. And the timeline, just know those are draft timelines, right? My favorite word when we're doing construction, there's no such thing as on time, right? But we're going to do our best to stick to that schedule. And at the end of the day, the main thing is that we get done by December of 29 closeout, because that's when the aid needs to start to correlate to the aid dropping off our books. So, and that's where we get into play with the financial advisors to make sure that everything is working fine. So, any questions on that? Because that's kind of, so after this phase, we submit to SED, we get the approval, we go out to bid, and then we award bids and start the construction process.
So this project doesn't go away. It's not as public, but behind the scenes, there's lots of work, right? And periodically, if there's noteworthy communications to share, this group will, be happy to present. But lots of work to do. We're excited to see it come about.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
It's exciting, but now it feels the hurry up and wait.
Right. Well, we saw what happened last year. It seems like we were waiting for SED for 2020, and now look what's happening. It's like waiting for what, right?
It'll happen one way or another. We'll get to it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Thank you, guys. Can I make a motion to amend the agenda to go into exec session to cover some of our topics that were planned for after the tenure recognition? Because we could get some of them done now.
All in favor?
But, oh, sorry. You can
So, so I need a motion to enter into executive session.
So
Rich? Dan? All in favor?
Aye.
If you're viewing from home, we will be doing exec. We will re-adjourn and then, I'm sorry, we will re-enter and then adjourn. You won't miss anything. We also have a 10-year celebration in between, so we're excited to do that. But we'll be back in an hour and a half for our business meeting.